So hello everyone, this is our first Python lesson for batch B of course 3, and in this lesson we are going to look at Python basics, its syntax, introduction, and we're going to look at what variables are, the data types, and then we're going to look at strings and string methods. Now all of these basics are what you need to understand before you can tie concepts up together in the software development project. Now, my name is Mildred, and I am your instructor for this course and all of the web development courses. We're going to start by looking at the installation of Python and what you need to install to get started. Now, the first thing you need to do is to make sure that you have Python installed. If you don't have Python installed, you want to move to python.org and then go to downloads and download the latest version of Python for your operating system. The latest version is always Python 3 point something, whatever it's going to be. But at the time of this course, we are using Python 3. So you get the latest version of Python installed, and it comes installed with pip, which is a package manager for Python. So once this is installed on your system, you want to head over to your command line. But instead of us going to the command line, we just want to go straight to installing Visual Studio Code. And you go to code.visualstudio.com and you install whatever you find for your operating system. Automatically, it is going to pick up your operating system, and then you can install that for the operating system that you have. And once you have Python installed, you install Visual Studio Code. You can head over to where your install Visual Studio Code is and open your code. And then you can now go to File and add folder to Workspace. If you already have your project folder on your desktop or whatever directory you want, you can just select that folder that you have created and you add that folder to the Workspace. And so when you go to the Explorer, you will see the folder that you have created where you want to put all of your practice files. Also, we have the terminal here, which is best for us to use so that regardless of our operating system, whether you're using Windows, Mac, or Linux, we will have the same working scripts and we don't have to write code for different operating systems. So I advise you all to use your terminal from Visual Studio Code. Now, while Visual Studio Code is the first choice we have, you can install PyCharm or any code editor of your choice, but just make sure that you are able to follow properly with the course. We will not support any issues we have with other code editors except for Visual Studio Code. So once you have all of this set up, and if you don't have it set up, you want to go to lesson 1 of week 1 to see how to set this up. You want to check your Python version to ensure that you have the correct version of Python installed. You put Python 3 to minus sign like this and version, and it tells you the version of Python. So my version is Python 3.11.4. Yours might be different depending on what version you have, but just make sure you have Python version higher than 3.9. We also want to see if we have pip installed. We'll say pip. There's the pip version. If that doesn't work, you do pip 3 version. And then we see the version of pip installed or the version of pip that we have. So once you have all of this set up, everything is ready for you to use. We write programs as a set of instructions to do something. The whole idea of software development is about giving set of instructions and algorithms for something to be done. We want to say, if this is that, do this, or if that is this, do this, or do this a number of times until something happens. Those are the set of instructions that make up software development. And for you to be able to come up with this set of instructions, there are different syntax across programming languages. And in Python, we use new lines and spaces and indentation for its syntax. So I'll create a new file here, and I'll name this file intro.py. Now I can't overemphasize how important these basic topics are. The topics you learn from week 1 to 5 determines your success in this course. As much as we want to skip over to the software development part, you will not succeed in software development without understanding the basics. As a matter of fact, every technical interview you have to get a job will ask you questions on algorithm, string and string methods, and on collection types. Once you know these types, you are on your way to getting your job, because these are the concepts they want to test, and once you know these concepts, you can do about anything in software development. Now we want to look at the Zen of Python. Before we do that, let's see the different ways we can use Python. We've said we can use Python for mathematical sciences, we can use it for statistics, for software development, for data analysis. We can use Python for web development, actually. But Python is more suited for anything that has to do with statistical analysis and data analysis. But in recent times, Python has been used as a scripting language for the back end of a lot of softwares, even though personally it's not my choice for back end for software development. There are some applications that are report intensive that you might want to use Python for the sake of visualization and statistical analysis. There are also other advanced things you do with Python, like scripting for cybersecurity, write scripts to do very cool stuff. I've used Python for neuroscience before to analyze brainwaves. We've used Python to do cybersecurity stuff, to scan all of the devices on the internet. Those are the kind of scripts you can develop with Python, using them as scripting language to do certain things. Most of the endpoints you develop when we use things like Fast API, or you want to do APIs development, is more convenient when you use Python. And so all of these basic concepts you are going to learn from weeks 1 to 5 will help you to understand how to do this stuff, and we'll try to have extra classes that works with real-world projects before we get to part 3, where we build our class project, which is going to be a pregnancy registration and maternity reporting system. Now, in this system, we are going to have specifications on how we are going to build from data collection to how we analyze this data and how we report events around different pregnancies to track different things. Maybe we have reporting indicators. We want to see how many women were healthy throughout the pregnancies, how many of them had high-risk pregnancies, how many of the children were born with birth defects. We can define different indicators and see how we build them into the software development for reporting purposes. And then when we get to another course where we do data analysis, then we'll begin to see how we can use this data for informed decision making. So if you want to get a Python shell from your terminal, all you need to do is to type Python 3 like this. And then you get the shell indicated by this 3 greater than sign. Now you can start typing Python code when you can start typing code here. So let's say we want to look at the syntax of Python. We want to say if, for instance, let's say if 10 is greater than 20, we want to do something. Now we see these 3 dots here. It's telling us to continue on the same line with this. But this is going to give us an error because scope in Python is defined with indentation. Indentation are the spaces we have before a code. Now we are saying if 10 is greater than 20, we want to do something. This is a statement that is going to continue, which means that it's supposed to be within a scope, which means it has to be indented. Now, the number of spaces you leave when you are indenting is not defined, but it has to be consistent. You can't use 4 spaces in the first line and 6 spaces in the second line. Most of the time, we just use tab, which will automatically give 4 spaces. And then I will say do something, which I'll just say print. And I want to print 10 is greater than 20. We're just illustrating the syntax of Python. And when you do this and you enter, there will be no error. Everything is okay. But in the event I do something like, let me just exit out of this and come back. Sorry. I do something like if 10 is less than 20, I'll say print 10 is less than 20. Now this is going to result in an indentation error because the scope here is not defined, and we define scope with indentation, and when I enter I will have indentation error, expected an indented block after the if statement on line 1. We have to learn how to read error messages so that we can know exactly what we have done wrong and for us to correct it. And when you see indentation error, it just means that this line is supposed to have space to continue this if statement, and it has to be indented. Okay, so this is one way to use Python. We can use it in the shell to quickly test our code to see if it works. Now we have something we call the Zen of Python, and what that means is just to look at the different rules to which Python operates, or with the different rules we want to keep to make our code Pythonic. And this was created by Tim Peters, and to get the Zen of Python you just to import this. This is not found. Let me get it to the Python shell, Python 3, and then I'll do import this. And then we have the Zen of Python. So if you go to a Python shell and you put import this, and the Zen is beautiful is better than ugly, explicit is better than implicit, simple is better than complex, complex is better than complicated, flat is better than nested, sparse is better than dense, readability counts. We have special cases aren't special enough to break the rules. Although practicality beats purity, error should never pass silently. Unless explicitly silenced, in the face of ambiguity, refuse the temptation to guess. There should be one, and preferably only one, obvious way to do it. Although that way may not be obvious at first unless you are, except you are Dutch. Now is better than never. Although never is often better than right now, if the implementation is hard to explain, it is a bad idea. If the implementation is easy to explain, it may be a good idea. Namespaces are one honky great idea. Let's do more of those. And if you keep to these rules, you're going to have better code and less buggy code. So every time you want to remind yourself about how to make your code more Pythonic, you want to look at the Zen of Python by just typing import this. Either you do that in a Python shell like this, or you write that within your file and just write import this, and then you want to run that, and then it's going to still display that for you here. Okay, so let's get down to the topics of the day. So we've looked at Python syntax and how we write Python code. We're going to understand the syntax better as we practice and as we write codes and as we get error messages. In Python, we have something that we call comments. And when you want to write code, sometimes you want to leave comments explaining, especially for those of you who have done internship with us. When you work in teams, you want to leave comments on what you are doing, what you intend to do. If you did something based on documentation and is a complex topic or something complex, you want to even leave the reference to where you got that information from, and for other developers or even for your future self to come back there and understand what it is that you did previously. So we use it to explain the code logic and the logic or the reasoning why we write code. We also use it to prevent a code block from execution. Maybe you are testing different block of code, you comment things out. And in Python, we write comments in different ways. If we want to write a comment in multiple lines, we can use 3 quotes like this, and between the quotes we can write all the notes we want to write. For instance, I want to write this document and put the author there, and then I want to write something like the date of the document, and today is 18th. and things like that. And the description, introduction to Python. So these are multi-line things. You want to leave notes like this there. There are licenses, you can write licenses there. Whenever you write this on a Python file, the interpreter knows not to execute this line of code. These are just information for people to read when they read the code. We can do things like a single line comment, and a single line comment in Python is written with a number sign like this, and it just explains a particular line of code. For instance, if I want to put something and I want to put the expected value, I can do something like, for instance, I'll say if x is less than y, I want to do something if x is less than y. And let's say I have something called x is equal to 5, and I have something called y is equal to 10. Then I now say if x is less than y, I want to print x is less than y, else I want to print x is greater than y, here like this. Now, let's say I'm expecting something here to say, because x is less than y, I'll write something like, this should be printed. So now I'm leaving a comment beside this code. The interpreter is not going to do anything with anything that has the hash symbol here, except when we start doing type hinting and we go into the production part of the development, and we want to start ignoring the type here, just so that it will pass through any test. Then this hash begins to make sense to the interpreter. But for now, we are going to use this just as comments to just leave notes beside what we are doing, especially when you are writing a code and you don't understand and you have an assignment to submit. And before you submit your script, you can just leave a note beside there. And so when somebody is grading, we will know exactly how you are thinking. Most of the time, we are going to grade more of your thought process and the way you think than whether your code is actually correct or not. Thinking and the power of your imagination is what even makes you a better developer than actually getting it right. Because you will meet complex kind of work, you are going to invent what you are going to be doing. You should be able to think about things without looking for references or where those things exist. And so we write comments this way, and we leave all of these different notes. Is a very good habit to leave comments, write about everything you're doing, the logic behind everything you're doing. Now, we have values stored in something we call variables, and they're like containers like this. We have number 5. We store it in a variable called x. We have number 10. We store it in a variable called y. X and y are called variables in Python. And variables are just containers for values. And it happens most of the time that you want to have values in variables, especially when those values change frequently. You don't want to have, let's say you have hundreds or thousands of lines of code. You don't want to put 5 on all those, number 5 everywhere on those lines of code, and maybe the occurrence of 5 will be thousands. And then when you now see that the value is no longer 5, it's now 10, you have to go look for those thousands of lines to change all the occurrence of 5 to 10. Your program will break if you miss something, and then there will be no consistency and integrity to what you're writing. And so you store this value in variables that can change so frequently, so that when it changes, everywhere there is x, you don't need to change it. You just come up here and change the value of x. If x becomes 8, it becomes 8. And then it automatically tails down. So everywhere you mention x will automatically have the value of 8. So you change in one place, it applies everywhere. We are going to understand this deeper when we go forward. So the best method to practice is to watch these videos. Watch all your pre-recorded videos, lesson 1 to 5. It will not make sense the first time. Watch your live lessons. It will not make sense. Go back to your pre-recorded video the second time. It will begin to make sense, but not completely. And then start watching it the third time while you practice, and then it will make perfect sense. If you give up so easily, you won't get anywhere, because the first time is always discouraging. Now, I must tell you, Python is the easiest language in the world you can ever learn. But mastering Python is where the difficulty starts. No other programming language is as easy as Python. So you can give your variables any name. We have given it x and y to just store numbers. We can give it something like first name. Maybe I want to store my first name there. Or we can give it something like last name. Now, where this is going to be applicable in real life is when you have a form or a front end and people enter information on the form. you want to extract the values from this form. Let's say you have an online form where people register for something. Now you have hundreds of people registering. You can't be collecting each name of the person. You want to store it in a variable. So when the person clicks submit, he goes to the backend script. It automatically says anything entered in the first name field, store it in the first name variable. Last name field in the last name variable. You don't need to know the value. The program doesn't need to know the value. It just needs to know the name of the variable. And whatever value is stored in it at the time the form is submitted, it will now take those values and now send it to the database or do whatever you want with it. That way you have one script for millions of people because you use variables. So this is the power of variables. So you want to store every value that you have in a variable and then do something with the variable name. But there are rules to naming variable. As much as we can name it short names like X and Y and A and B, we can also name them like more descriptive names like first name and last name and middle name, or want to say age or date of birth. You can name them anything, but you want the name to be meaningful and the name to reflect the value that it holds. And the rules you want to keep to is that you must start with a letter of the alphabet or an underscore, but you can't start a variable name with a number. I can't start a variable name with a number like this. I'll see this red wriggly line that tells me it's an error. Another rule is that when you write it, you see I use underscore. You can't use spaces like this. There'll be an error. So for you to join, you can use snake case and use cases like this to write your variable names. So there cannot be spaces between variables. You can't have two-word variable. Okay? There are keywords in Python, and you can't use those keywords as your variable name. And we are going to look at the different keywords in Python. Things like print is a keyword, it's a function name in Python. Things like when we call the name of a method that is in Python, those are keywords. They cannot be variable names. You also want to learn the habit of having short descriptive variable names. You don't want to have variable names. Maybe a variable is storing first name and I write country there. It's very misleading. So if, for instance, I write country, but actually what it stores is first name, it's not going to be a good way of naming your variable because it does not reflect the value that it carries. Okay? So these are the rules, and once you get this rule right, you want to store different values there in variables. There's something we call data types in Python, and you have seen me write my name, but you see it in quotes. Whatever you put in quotes, single quotes or double quotes like this, is called a string. You can't write string without a quote. The system will think it is a constant or a variable that you have written. Anytime you're writing any word, it has to be in quotes. A word, a sentence, anything you need to write that has strings of characters needs to be in quotes, either single quotes or double quotes, and we'll call this a string. Anything that is a number like this doesn't need to be quoted, and we call this a number types. Now there are different number types. We have integer, which is whole number. We have float, which is going to be decimal number like this. 8.0, this is float. And then we have other number type like complex. We have other data types like list, tuple, which are all collection types, and these are the types of variables that store multiple values. So if something is a list, it stores a list of items, not just one item. So what we are seeing here now with string and number is we are only storing one value in this variable. Let's say we want to store names of people, not just one name. We can't just store Mildred. We can store it like this. Mildred, let's say we want to store another name. Jane, we want to store another name. John, this is still going to be a string. And this is not going to reflect what we want. And at the end of the day, this is going to be something we have to use string method to now maybe break this string on comma or so. And we'll look at that when we look at string methods. But the best way to do something like this is to store this in a list. And the list, you use square brackets in Python. And when you use square brackets, each of these is an item on its own. And then they're all comma separated list of items. And so when we now look at list next week, we can now see how we can work with this list to get the items in the list. So you now have several values in one variable. In the variable or the data type of that variable is called a list. So at index position 0, counting starts at 0, we have Mildred. We want to get the value at index position 1, 2, 3, 4. And this is a list in Python. So I'm not going to deal with this today. We'll deal with the number type and the string type, or the numeric type and the string type of data. So anything we have inside of the quotes is called a string, and we write string using either single or double quotes. We can have, let's illustrate the common errors that we'll have when we use strings. Let's say I have this variable called x, and I want to store something like, let me use double quotes here. This is Mildred's first Python program. This is okay. I can use the print function to print out the variable x. And when I clear here and I run, I have, this is Mildred's first program printed here, because that is what I have in the variable x. Now, this goes well, but assuming I have a single quote around this, then we begin to have error, because the interpreter does not understand that this apostrophe is not the end of this quote, and then it sees it as the end of this quote and now begins to wonder what these other texts are, because this does not reflect Python anymore. How do we solve problems like this? When you have a surrounding single quote and then one of the character is the offending character within the text, before the offending character you want to put a backslash, and we call this the escape character. And once you do that, the error goes away. Now, the good thing about Visual Studio Code is that it gives you this red wriggly line when you have an error. And when you look at the text like this, then you know that there is no error. And if I clear here and I run again, you will now begin to see that there is no error with the program. You can either do it like this as one way to write this so you don't have errors, or sometimes people use a different way of writing strings so that they don't have errors like this. But it's just better we learn things the best way. So I'll just show you how to do it this way. If you have double quotes like this, and let's say you want to quote something here, then you now begin to have a problem too. And so before the offending character, you want to put a backslash for Python to understand that this is part of the text. It is not the end of the string. Just something like this. Okay? So take note that you put a backslash before the offending character. The offending character here is the quote that matches the start quote and gives the interpreter this confusion. If you have a single quote, the offending character will be the single quote. So when you want to write a text and when you develop your program and you see this problem of when people leave a space between something without a comma, you can't find it, it truncates, or when you have a matching quote, it does not give you anything after that quote, it is because when that program was created, it was using offending characters in between, and then the system just truncates it before sending to the database, and then by the time you want to retrieve, you don't get the same text back, and you start getting errors, all sorts of errors, because what you are trying to get doesn't match what was finally stored. And we see a lot of those errors in softwares. Anybody with question before I go further? So once you're able to understand all of these and all of these basic concepts, you're on your way to now start using these to write programs in Python. We have looked at strings. Let's look at how to look at the different data types. We've said that numbers, we have the numeric types. We have the int, which is the whole number. We have the float, and we have the complex. Now, complex numbers will not be useful for our use case, except people with doing some kind of complex electromagnetic physics and the rest. You begin to see the importance of complex numbers. let's look at the way we can cast from one data type to another. And you need this casting when you begin to collect user input, because sometimes what you want to collect is a number, and when you use the input function, it comes as a string, and you want this number to be casted back to a number type or a numeric type, either int or float. And before you are able to maybe compare the value, let's say for instance you want the user to enter their age. Let's run that example so that we can understand why we cast. Let's say we want to have a variable user input, and we'll say enter your age. Now we are assuming that this age they enter because they're going to enter a number. When we come here and say we want to get, we don't convert yet, but we want to get things like if user input. So we'll say if user input is greater than 18, then say print you're an adult. Else want to print you are a minor, like this. This is going to result in an error. Why? Because even though, let's run this program, I enter an age and the age is 10, we are not going to be able to compare a string and a number under normal circumstance, and we have type error not supported between instances of string and int. Now the reason is, although we entered an integer, the input function is going to give us a string, and that's why we do casting. At this point we want to say user input is equal to int user input. Now when we cast, we have this frame method for casting. We can use the int method like this to cast, and in the parentheses of the int method we put whatever variable or value we want to cast to an int. We have the float method like this for us to cast, and we have the string method. So we can use this method. In the parentheses, you supply the variable name or the value you want to change from whatever data type to the int, what you want to change from float to int, from int to float, or from string to float, and what you want to change from string, from any of these to string. These are the different methods we use. So now we have used int user input. So we are converting what is entered as a string, and because once we enter this, let's say we enter 18, it's not going to be 18 like this, it's going to be 18 quoted, and the system will see it as a string. But because it's a number that is quoted, it's easy for us to cast this string to an int. If we have a set of characters that is quoted, we cannot cast this to an int because it is not numbers, it is string. So we can cast a quoted number to a string. Okay, so for this example, we are saying if the user input is greater than 18, we want to say you're an adult. But normally we're not printing you're an adult, we're just doing an example. Maybe you want to do something, maybe release a form to sign, or maybe you want to let them have access to a particular page on the system, or if this person is a minor, you want to give a consent form we want to display. So we're using print now just as a placeholder to just test things like this. So user input, the input function is what we use to get inputs or collect inputs from a user. And when you get this input, you want to first of all cast it to an int because it's an integer you're comparing with. And once we do this time, we are not going to get any error anymore because we have now casted from a string to an int. So when I say 18, and then it now says you are a minor. Now we say if it's greater than 18, we want to print you're an adult. And if it is less than 18, you're a minor. What I put in here is 18 and it says you're a minor. So these are just the kind of bugs we'll look at and see why is it printing. The input I put is not greater than 18, it is equal to 18. So you're going to say if it is less than 18, you are a minor, right? And if it is equal to, so you see the logic behind the kind of error we just had here. It's not an error, but it is like a mistake. The program gives people wrong details because of the way we have written it. We're just giving a condition of if it's greater than 18, but what happens if it's equal to 18? So because it is less, the condition we gave initially is if it is greater, it does not account for if it is equal to. So when we say else, we are meaning if it is equal to or if it is less than, it will say you're a minor. But once we correct it by changing the logic, and this is where programming gets interesting, logic is all that it needs. How you think about things. So at our age 18 is not less than 18, you're an adult. So you see, just changing the logic by using less than sign and changing what it prints out begin to give you the correctness that you seek. Is there any question? So there are different things we can do with strings that are so powerful. We can concatenate strings in different ways. There are different ways we concatenate string, and I'll tell you the most convenient way in software development. Let's say we collect data from a form. We have the first name, we have the last name, we have the age. Let's say we also have middle name. Let me put the middle name. Okay, so we have all of these variables. We don't want to say print first name, print last name. Let's just put date of birth and let's not put age. So we have the first name, middle name, last name, birth date as variable names. We want to be able to write a sentence with this thing. And let's say you want to print a welcome message. Like you see these automated emails that come after you register for something. It just extracts all of this and now insert this variable name somewhere. You begin to wonder sometimes, if millions of people fill this form, how does the system automatically just send an automatic message with the person's name and details inserted in different positions? It's because they use something called format string like this. So I want to write hello, my first name is first name, middle name, last name. So I want to just say my name is, and I want to combine first, middle, and last name. Now in Python, we do format string by writing an F and then quotes, either single or double. And within the quotes, we begin to write our sentence. When we want to insert a variable name within the sentence, we now use the curly brace. So like what we did here is, the print function is something we always use to see the output. The print function is written print and a pair of parentheses. In the pair of parentheses, you begin to write out what you want to print. Either you want to print out the variable name, like saying I want to print out the value held in this variable, first name. And when I do that, I'll just comment this out here. And when I do this, like I want to print first name, you'll see to print out the value held in the variable first name. Now, if I want to print out something else that is not this variable name, I want to print long text or sentence in between, I will just say print, I'll put an F, and immediately after the F, without any space, I'll put a quote, and within the quotes, I'll start writing my sentence. I don't want to write my name here because this is going to be collecting the different details from different people. So if hundreds of people are filling a form at the same time, you want to be storing that data or whatever they're filling into the variable name. And so you don't care what the value is. The system doesn't want to know what the value is. You just want to know the name of the variable that holds that value. And when you plug in the variable name here, it is just going to automatically print out the value that it held at the time of printout. Now I'll say, hello, my name is. It will now print out my full name on the screen when I run. So it will take my first, middle, and last name because I put each of the variable name within curly brace, within the parentheses of the format character like this when you put F. There's another way to do this. This is the most convenient way. This is the most recommended way. This is the best way. You can also decide to use pluses like say sentence is equal to, and then I'll say something like my name is, and then here I'm going to say plus. I'm going to end this and I'll put plus first name plus. So now look at how complicated it is to write all of this. Put plus, the name of the first name plus, and when I put this is a space because this will not automatically put a space like this does, and then last name. See how not convenient this is. And if I come here to say I want to print sentence, it will print out fine because everything is fine there. but it's not convenient to write it that way, where I can just use the format string one time. So when I run this, I have that my name is Mildred, all my names, and I was born on, we plug in the variable names like that. This can easily result in error. This is not so convenient in programming. This is the most recommended way. Although any way you do it is correct, but you will prefer to do things this way. Is there any question? Okay, if there's no question, we move straight to the next agenda, which is looking at the different string methods. We're not going to look at so much of them because your week 1 lessons have them. This is just to help you to get started and understand the lesson. So let's look at the string methods that we have. We're just going to look at a few, and then you can look at the reference to see different string methods. Now, let's say I put my first name in all lowercase, or you collect information from a form and they're in lowercase. And then for names, you want to make the first letter uppercase, like that. There is a method for strings that you can use, which is called the title method. Let's say I want to print first name, and I'll say print, and I'll say first name dot, then I'll put the method called title. This is going to make the first letter of that name capital uppercase letter, because now it's lowercase. If I say print first name first, it's going to print it in lowercase, and then I say print first name dot title, it's going to print the first letter in uppercase, like you can see. So every time you collect information, you want to convert that information to lower. Let's say we want to send this to the database. Whatever the user enter, you want to say you're converting it to lowercase. And you need this sometimes when you want to sort and do other things to make sure that everything is in lowercase or everything is in uppercase and all those kind of stuff. So we can say, like, I want to say print first name, and I say dot lower. Or I want to say something like first name. So what you will see most commonly in software development is saying first name is equal to first name dot title, or first name dot lower, or something like that. So when you say dot lower, it means that even if the person has put all of this in uppercase, it will convert to lowercase. All of it will convert to lowercase, and then it will now capitalize the first letter like this. So let's see how this works. So I first of all change the first name from all uppercase to lowercase, and I'll print it, and you see that instead of it to print out in uppercase, it will be in lowercase because I converted here. And instead of it to be in lowercase here, it's going to capitalize the first letter of the first name. So we can see that it printed in lowercase because we converted it here, and then we now printed it in title case for the first letter to be capitalized. The way we have lower here, we can also have upper. The string method, and if this is in lowercase, it's going to print it in uppercase or store it in uppercase, because that is what I have said it should do. So this is how we use string methods. There are several methods we have in strings. I want you to look at your lessons, research more string methods, and try to practicalize using these different string methods. They are going to help you a lot in everything from interviews to developing of softwares. We need it. There are things that we can do, like we want to give, let's say we want to create an auto generator. We are registering newborn babies. We want to give their birth certificate number or their social security number also. And we have an algorithm to say, how is this number generated automatically by the system for it to be unique? This is where we begin to use string methods. Like maybe we want to say, we want to use the first letter of the first name, the second letter of the middle name, or the second letter of the last name, the last digit of the year of birth, things like that. Or then we want to use the first 3 letters of the month of birth, and all of this combination now begins to make this happen. And then we want to put some random string in between to make it unique. And then that algorithm is going to work for everybody. because this is the algorithm we've set the system to do. So how do we pick out the second letter of the last name? We use the string method. And so by the time you are programming these algorithms, you begin to see how powerful string is in Python. In fact, strings particularly, if you understand strings, you'll be able to do a lot of stuff. Okay? Is there any question? Let's look at how we can slice strings, because that is another thing we need to understand, slicing. When we talk about slicing, let's write a sentence. Let's just say equal to hello world. Now, just like lists, strings are like lists that are indexed. Indexing starts from 0. So we say H is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. The comma is 5. The space is 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So these have 12 characters. In Python, when we want to look at the length of a particular stuff, let's print the length of sentence. So we'll say we'll print len, and in a pair of parentheses, we put a variable whose length we want to print out. So when we count this, we have 0, 1. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. The length is 13 because it starts from 0. It's going to be 0 to 12. Let's see if this is correct. So we have 13 characters and index position 0. If we say let's print sentence 0, is going to be H printed out. H is the character at index position 0. So these things are indexed. If we want to say we want to see the last character, we use -1. And so let's print what we have at index, at the end, last index. So it's supposed to be the exclamation mark. And so when we run this, we have the exclamation mark. So we know how to get different characters at different index position in a string. Let's say we have this whole sentence, and what I want to just print out from this hello world is hello. So I have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You always want to go one above where you want to stop because the last is not inclusive. So it's 0 to 5 I want to print out. So I'll do 0, a colon, and 5 to print the character hello out to the page. So you put the start index and the end index. The end is not inclusive, so we want to print 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. If I put 4, it will stop at L. I have to go one above the end because the last is not inclusive to give me exactly what I want. Because I want to print from the beginning, I don't even need to put the 0. I can just omit it, and it's going to print from the beginning to where I asked it to stop. If I want to print from, let's say, only world I want, from W to the end, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and this starts from 7. So I can just put the start index, print from 7, and omit the end, like that. And then when I print this, it's just going to print the world. So you can omit it if you want it to go to the end, omit the start if you want it to start from the beginning. These are slicings. You're going to see a lot of this when you start doing your software development. So we've gotten what we want out of the string using these different methods. We can do negative slicing also, which can be a little confusing. The last index we know is -1, -2, -3, -4, -5, -6. This is -6. So one confusion you get is which is the start, which is the end. -7, -8, -9, -10, -11, -12, -13. We have the start as -13 and we have -1. So let's look at all the confusions we are going to meet. So we say we want to print -13 to -1. What does it mean? Is it going to print out the sentence, hello world? It's going to print out the sentence, hello world, without the apostrophe, the exclamation mark. Why is the exclamation mark excluded? -1, -2, -3, -4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Now, should we make this 14 to make this work? Those are the confusions you will have. If you don't practice this to get this confusion, you will not understand negative slicing. I did it this way and we still don't have it because there's no index like that. So how do we get the full sentence like this. So I want to say minus 13 to the end. Let's do this and see whether that will work. When you do this and run, you get the whole thing because we're starting from the start and going to the end. Let's say we don't want to print. Let's say we omit the start. We just want to print to the end. We do that and minus 1. Will this give us that, or is going to reverse the string? So let's do that. We have hello world to minus 1, omitting the last index. The last is not always inclusive, and that is what we put there. It's not always inclusive. So if you want to get to the end, you do not specify. You go from the start, which is minus 13 or 0, and then to the end, not inclusive. There are many ways to do this. Negative slicing is very, very confusing. Okay? Sorry. And we have hello world printed here. Is there any question about the string sliding?
No question from here for now.
Okay. So these are the topics from weeks, from lessons 1 to 5 of week 1. I need you to practice, watch the pre-recorded video. It is more detailed. Look at any extra resource. Go online to find out the different Python reserved keywords, the different that you can use as variable names, the different string methods. There are lots of them and what they do. We can't cover every string method, but I've given you an idea on how to use string methods and what they are used for. So if you read deeper about different string methods, you will see. So just type Python string method in your browser. You see the different methods. Try to use them out to see what they're used for. Make notes about them and say, okay, this string method is used for something useful. You begin to have mental notes of where to find the information when you need them. Now, the best way to study is not to have this information in your head. You will not succeed that way. You need to study smart. And studying smart means you make your brain a reference to what you want to get. So when you find that thing, you don't remember it, but you know it exists, but you just remember where to find it. And so at the point where you need to develop something, you just say, I need to get the second letter of this word. There's a string method. I don't know what it is. Let me go back and research what it is. Because you know it exists. You know where to find it when you need it. You don't need to store it in your head. It makes you study smart. It makes you a better developer. So all you need to do is to make your brain a reference to the materials that you need, or in reference to what you need to know. You just need to know what exists, where to find it when you need it. You don't need to keep it in your head. Okay? Nobody is going to test you, and there's no developer that has to sit down and have to do things from their head. Only at the stage of interviews, and they don't make the interviews so complex. It's just as basic string methods like this, or write a function that will check if the input is an even number or an odd number or a prime number, things like that. Or that will bring out any, that will look at the sequence of number and tell you if this number is divisible by 3. Things, those kind of logic they want to see you understand. And these are the things you need to practice. So in next week's lesson, we'll have a live class next week because we are going to be discussing a little more complex topics like the collection types, and we'll try to do live examples of more complex types and the kind of questions you are going to see interviews. So for those of you who came from other batches to learn, you need to really understand these basics. And your assignment 1 actually will test you, I think it's task 3, on the different string methods and how to do different things with a string. You also want to look at how to interpolate strings, and we're going to look at those things next week before you can do tasks 4, 5, and 6 of your assignment 1. So if there's no question, this is where we end the lesson. I will make the recording available as soon as I get them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.